We're live.
We're live.
Perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and call the Real Property Committee meeting to order. It's 5 o'clock, Wednesday, August 12th already. This virtual meeting due to COVID-19 pandemic. All committee members are present, including administration. And then the next item on the agenda is an acknowledgement that the press and public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The next item on the agenda would be approval of previous month's minutes of July 14th. If there's a motion to approve, or if there's any
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, so you might be saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll move forward. Next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. We'll go ahead and I believe there will be read. Let me get back to my
I have them.
And if we can go ahead and we'll start and we'll cut you off if it goes past 30 minutes.
Oh, no. That's good. Karen Snyder, 905 Carolina Boulevard. Tidal Wave Sports is a great business in IOP. They offer adventures for guests as well as residents. Their employees are awesome and they are respectful of the creeks and wildlife. Don't know why they'd be kicked out of the marina. Their footprint is small. Please let them stay. We love their services. Patsy Hinman, 7 Barnacle Row. I will be as brief as I can since I have already sent a lengthy email to all 3 members of the Real Property Committee. I did read this. Okay. I strongly support the presence of Tidal Wave Sports at the Isle of Palms Marina, and I hope that the city will negotiate in good faith for a new lease with them. The reasons for my support include the pleasure that my kids and grandkids get when they can get an opportunity on the waterway with the jet skis, kayaks, and parasailing offered by Tidal Wave. Tidal Wave offers the only opportunity for IOP for people who don't own personal watercraft to get out on the water that way. I also support Tidal Wave for showing itself to be a very good tenant by providing help to those needing water rescues, by purchasing a van to transport customers to and from the marina area, thereby reducing their impact on the parking situation, and by offering to provide assistance to IOP residents who want to launch their own kayaks and paddleboards from the dock space leased to Tidal Wave. I don't know of any other marina tenants doing anything similar to help IOP residents and visitors. In that email, I also expressed my concerns about several things related to the city's handling of marina-related issues. I still don't understand how a well-designed RFP for a new restaurant at the marina would have yielded only 3 responses, all of which have ties to IOP. Although I do think that the city is negotiating with the best of the 3 responses, I question why there were no responses from anyone in other areas, for example, Mount Pleasant, Hilton Head, Myrtle Beach, or anywhere else around the state or even across the country. At the community forum about the marina, my rights were violated, something I have never said before now, when an IOP city employee took a piece of paper out of my hand just when I sat down at the table and started to read it, telling me that I wasn't allowed to have that piece of paper in the room. That piece of paper had been given to me by Michael Fem of Tidal Wave as I was entering the room. Why was I not allowed to read it? When the forum results were presented at the most recent city council meeting, the red dot votes taken at the end of the forum were discounted under the assumption that some attendees may have given their 3 red dots to other attendees. If that happened, it was no different than giving someone your proxy vote, and nothing was said during the forum to indicate that you could not give your red dots to someone else. The red dot votes and many of the comments made during the forum showed a lot of favorable support for keeping Tidal Wave at the marina. Is that why they are now being discounted? Also, at the recent city council meeting, it was said or implied that the new restaurant would need the parking spaces not now allotted to Tidal Wave. Why is that so? Was the possibility of additional parking mentioned in the RFP? Was the need for additional parking mentioned in the response to the RFP? If Morgan Creek Grill got by with the parking spaces allotted to it, why can't a new restaurant do likewise? There are a lot of executive sessions for almost every committee meeting, but this is especially true for issues related to the marina. Rarely, if ever, are residents given a good explanation as to why the sessions are needed or what was discussed/decided during those sessions. Given the questionable things that we know about, one has to wonder what kind of details might be happening behind closed doors with no opportunity or citizen input. Lack of transparency breeds lack of trust. Kenneth McDowell, 16 Fairway Village Lane. A big thank you to members of City Council who have been looking out for the residents of the Palms in the face of an onslaught of special interest. My biggest concern is overcrowding, especially at our marina. It's bad for the environment and bad for our quality of life. It's a zoo over there. With the presumed reopening of the restaurant, it will get even worse. Closing down the Tidal Wave concession will give us a little breathing room. less noise and traffic, and an opportunity to provide a little precious public space for all the residents of the Isle of Palms. Garrett Kraus, 1 Coastal Court. Now that you have the lease done, the whole island, including over 1,000 other supporters on the residents 4 Tidal Wave page, are wondering when you are going to discuss their lease extension. If what I heard was correct and you did not give the Tidal Wave parking away for the new restaurant lease, then here are the facts. 1, Tidal Wave is permitted and licensed and brings value to the community. 2, dock is in place. 3, parking is available. 4, all marina tenants want them to stay. 5, and most important, the community overwhelmingly wants them to remain in the marina. Last I heard, you on real property and the rest of City Council represent the residents of IOP, who this should be a very simple process to complete unless there is another secret agenda. Lastly, I stand by my earlier comment that Randy Bell should recuse himself or be recused from any Tidal Wave lease issues or votes due to personal bias and conflict of interest. And that ends your public comments. You're on mute.
Right.
You're on mute. Hey, now you're still back on mute.
From mute.
I'm not.
There you go.
So the okay, got it. The marina tenants comments. We will move on to old business. We have update on marina dock permitting and dock rehabilitation project. But at this time, because we have Kirby Marshall here, I was going to ask if we could go ahead and Desiree, you want me to go ahead and get reorder the agenda so Kirby can speak and talk about moving item 6 up into at this time of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to move item 6 up.
Okay.
I'll second.
Perfect. Motion and a second. We're going to move item 6 of new business up, which is discussion and consideration of including as an alternative bid the removal of the existing finger piers and pilings on the Intracoastal Waterway T-Dock as a part of the Marina Dock Rehabilitation Project. There. Moving forward.
You want to say a vote for that?
Oh yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
All right,
Does
so
everyone fill us in?
yeah, I'll start, and then Ron is going to share his screen so that we can see the drawings that are included in your packets that show the existing conditions, and then the concept 2, which was approved by council for the dock rehabilitation project. So as you all know, we are negotiating a new lease for the restaurant building, and as part of the lease premises for that agreement, it includes this section of the, I guess they're not seeing my cursor, but if you don't mind, Ron, we're talking about the restaurant, the T-Dock on the Intercoastal Waterway. So that end is going to be assigned to the restaurant lease. And they reached out to the city, the prospective potential tenant, future marina tenant, marina restaurant tenant, reached out to the city about how feasible it was or would be to either extend the finger piers out to where the pilings are, which you can see as depicted as dots towards the outside of the existing dock, extending that further or removing them altogether. So we reached out and had a meeting with Kirby Marshall and the restaurant, potential marina restaurant tenant, and Kirby will fill us in those discussions with both the OCRM and the Corps of what it would take for the tenant to extend those finger piers. Kirby, do you want to go ahead and kind of fill us in on what the plan A was? Ron, keep it on the other one, please. There you go.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so we met with John out there, the prospective restaurateur, and just as Desiree said, he acknowledged what I think we all can recognize is the existing half-length finger piers are not really user-friendly. They're pretty difficult to for boaters to use, especially boaters with a little bit bigger boats. So he simply asked, well, hey, can we extend those to mooring piles and put a hoop around the mooring pile and give our boaters at the restaurant a little bit better access to the restaurant. So I said, yeah, makes sense. It's pretty straightforward from an engineering structural construction standpoint. So we reached out to OCRM and the Corps of Engineers on the subject, knowing that they're both very highly attuned to what's going on at the marina, and with relatively small changes like this. So we got initial feedback from the Corps of Engineers that indicated that if we want to extend those fingers out to the piles, we would have to pursue a new permit to do that. That would be separate and change the permit that you have now to remove those fingers and move that dock waterward, which is depicted in layout option 2, a couple pages back. So we said, okay, well, this is a temporary measure. Can we get any relief? Thinking that the city may actually remove those fingers in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and relocate that dock out waterward as it's currently permitted, the new permit we just got for you. And they said, well, no, we would have to pursue a new permit to add length to those fingers now. And if in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whenever we wanted to go back and remove those fingers, we'd have to approach them and get another permit to remove them.
Hey, Kurt, if I might interrupt, if you comment on how long, for those that really don't understand how much work's been done on the marina, how long we've been in this permitting process already?
I don't have the exact, I can't
No,
remember
just roughly.
exactly,
I mean, this
Randy,
is,
but
Over
7 to 8,
12 months, I think.
12 months.
this process has been going on for a really long time in a
Yeah.
proactive way.
So we'd be looking, and that's a great point, Randy. We'd be looking at least, in our experience, 8 months to achieve a permit just to extend those fingers, which just doesn't compute to me, doesn't make sense. But and I ran it up the flagpole further at the Corps with some contacts we have there, and they confirmed that would indeed be the case. We would have to go through that process. So there doesn't seem to be any way around it. And regardless what OCRM says, we'd have to satisfy the Corps in this regard. So the permitting process would have to go forward. It just doesn't seem like it makes sense to do that. Go 8 to 12 months to do that, and then use it for a year or 2 or 3, and then 8 to 12 months to go back to what you currently have permitted.
Okay.
So since we already have permits, and Ron, if you don't mind scrolling down to show the, okay, we already have permits for this configuration for phase 3 of the dock. The next step that we were talking about as an alternative solution to address that would be to then remove or have, be in a position for the restaurant tour to potentially remove the finger piers altogether. Obviously, this concept assumes, like Herbie mentioned, moving that floating dock outwards and installing an ADA gangway. That's currently, none of that work is contemplated as part of the Marina Dock Rehabilitation Project. And it could still be done in phases, but we figured that since we are out for an RFP for the dock work, that an alternative would be to include in that bid as an alternate for the contractor who performs the work on phase 1 and phase 2 to give us a price and a potential schedule impact of removing those finger piers as part of this project. Doing it as an alternate would allow the city the opportunity to actually decide whether or not to move forward with it, understand what the true cost would be. We think that there would be some cost savings, and the reason being the contractor wouldn't have to mobilize twice, and they're already there. And this seems like a relatively small project compared to other components. But it wouldn't mean the city fully doing phase 3 as contemplated in concept 2. It would just be removing the finger piers and keeping the floating dock pretty much where it is, and also removing the pilings. So, you know, that I wanted to bring that up to you all because we have an opportunity to add it as an alternate. The bids for the dock rehabilitation project are expected by September 4th. So we could still, you know, we can put an addendum there and then see how those prices come back.
So Desiree, as a comparative, this is no different than what we did with the public safety building in deciding an alternative portico. It's a non-binding way to look at what the cost potential savings would be. The alternative would be to leave the finger docks in place, frankly, and not have an ideal condition. And just one other quick comment, Desiree, when we're talking about dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers and OCRM, we're not only dealing with two agencies, we're dealing across two governmental bodies. So this, to me, makes complete sense. And just to elaborate, the federal system and the state system. This makes a lot of sense to look at it now and bring it back to, I presume it'd come back through real property, but bring it back through real property and decide whether this is worth pursuing with full counsel for the additional expense.
Correct.
Right? Thank you.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Just a quick question, and I totally agree that we should add this as an alternative price. So Kirby, are we gonna have to adjust the permit to remove the pilings and the finger docks?
No, that, Kevin, that's been included in your current permit authorization.
Gotcha. Okay. And then what do we have enough at low tide on the inner side of the T dock on this concept too? So boats can tie up on both sides?
Yes, it's not ideal.
Small. Small.
You know, 15, 16, 17 footers, things like that. And it's difficult to get around the edges of the ends of the dock, particularly at the water sports dock end. I think you've got 19 feet between structures there. So it's really tight. So we're not talking about putting anything big back there, but there's a little bit of water there now. One of the reasons we want to shift the dock outward towards the channel is to pick up a little bit more water. But there's a little bit there in there now, and boats dock back there currently.
Because there's some silting going on behind the tidal wave dock, correct? Right now?
For sure. Yeah.
All on there.
I
All
think
of it.
the siltation by tidal wave is a little bit more localized. I'm sure it's going on behind this dock as well, but with that ditch that kind of outfalls right there behind the tidal wave dock, that just dumps sediment into that area. So I think that's probably the worst. Yeah, right there, Ron. That's probably the worst area of sedimentation that we're aware of. I think it's probably spilling over and occurring just naturally behind the intercoastal dock, the phase 3 dock. But like I said, there's boats coming and going behind there now, small boats, but
Right.
it seems to be usable.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
We're gonna move forward. I don't think we need a motion from the group. I just wanted to get your blessing and sort of discuss what our thoughts were, and that we're in a position now to be able to include that to get an idea of cost. I will say that the original concept that Kirby and ATM developed and the estimates associated with those improvements assume a full renovation cost of phase 3 at around $250,000, Kirby, if I'm not mistaken.
That
So
sounds right.
we think that just removing the finger piers, you know, it certainly shouldn't be more than what, Kirby? I'm not going to put you on the spot. I know you hate like when I.
Well,
we don't think it should be that much if it's coordinated as part of the overall project, and there's less mobilization cost.
right. Yeah, we will have to replace some of those pilings that are out at the end of the finger piers and place some pilings in behind the dock to add some we've been looking at it a little bit, and those piles at the end of the fingers seem to be, and I just picked up the design plans for the duct, I think yesterday, and started looking at those. The piles at the end of the existing fingers seem to be structural in terms of providing rigidity to the dock. So that'll have to be analyzed, and new piles added on the inside. And I think we could look at that in conjunction with potentially moving that out in the future, and being able to drive those piles now, pull them out and redrive them in the future, so that whatever work you're doing now isn't necessarily money down the drain. It's money that can be applied to the end product out there.
Perfect. And Desiree, you've talked to all the tenants down there, and they're fine with this and moving forward with this, and they feel it's going to be.
We've talked to I met with John Bush now, and a couple times now, and with Brian as well. Kirby and I had a meeting with Brian, pretty much just scheduling and coordinating as part of the overall dock rehabilitation project, and Brian was very receptive to the idea of removing all those finger piers. You all know that he has the other half. He has control of the other half, and everybody agrees that that's really the way to go.
Perfect. Good. There we go.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Kirby.
Sure.
So moving on, let's go into old business update on Marina dock permitting and dock rehabilitation project.
Okay, I'll give you a quick update on, we have still not yet received the Army Corps of Engineers permit for the water sports dock, so we're still waiting on that. And then an update on the dock rehabilitation project that, as we have been, talking about right now, it's out for bid. We've been receiving lots of questions from contractors, and we'll be compiling all that and issuing an addendum after the deadline for questions comes in. And we are very excited and eager to see those proposals coming in on our first week of September. So again, in terms of timing, we're hoping that final approval comes from council by the end of September, and we can issue a notice to proceed for construction by September 30th. So we have had one or two meetings with Brian, just coordinating that. And we also had a meeting with the electrical folks and Dominion Energy related to some changes and relocations of transformers and some panels, and everything's been going very well. So we're very excited to coordinate the dock rehabilitation project and the construction of the improvements to the restaurant this fall and winter, and be ready to go by March.
Good news. You guys, anybody else have any questions?
Nope. Good progress.
Good. Moving on, update of the Marina restaurant lease. I know we're still kind of waiting on some more information on that, and hopefully by the end of the week we'll have that to get for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and Kirby, I think you're still here, but you can. We don't need you anymore, but we always love you.
Good. No, thanks. I wasn't sure. I appreciate it, and thank you, and hope everybody stays well, and talk to you soon.
Thank you. We'll talk to.
Thank you.
So yes, we are continuing on our negotiations with the restaurateur, and as you all know, council approved an engagement of a real estate attorney and their team. So we had that meeting with them about 2 weeks ago, and they're drafting the lease documents, and we should be getting a document from them by the end of this week. And hopefully, if we do and it's ready, we'll present it to Ways and Means for some discussion, and before we submit it to the IOP families investment group. So progress as well, moving along, and hoping that we can get an agreement very, very soon.
Perfect. I think everybody's on that same page and wanting to see something happen. So is anybody else have any questions for Desiree?
Nope.
Okay. Moving on to update on the proposed ADA compliant beach walkover at 42nd Avenue. I know, Desiree, you had a Zoom meeting with some of the residents in the area, and we have some update on that.
Yes. The day after council meeting last month, we had a Zoom meeting with a number of residents from 42nd Avenue, some folks from Forest Trail, from around the neighborhood, not only 42nd Avenue. And we really, we had a really good discussion about what the project involves, what the, I guess, the vision and the goal for this project is being providing additional ADA compliant access for folks with disabilities. And we also took, really the purpose of the meeting was not only to explain to them the concept and the vision, but to also hear some of their concerns so that I could share those with council before we move move forward on this project. And pretty much, I guess the main concern from the community, and Ron, if I leave out anything, please chime in. Ron and Douglas participated in the meeting as well. So most of the concerns relate to traffic and the concern that the 42nd Avenue is already a very popular beach access path for both residents and neighbors of the area, and concerns that a new ADA walkover would turn into an attraction that may drive added more traffic or more interest, I guess, in accessing the beach from that location. Other concerns relate to it was mostly about traffic, right, Ron?
Yeah, I don't think that there were any real additional concerns other than just the safety of that area with regards to additional potential traffic due to, oh, this is the shiny new beach access. So
we also talked about, part of the project that when we talked about it at Real Property was this idea of potentially adding more handicap parking spaces, and the fact that there is enough space to maybe accommodate 1 or 2 additional ADA handicap parking spaces. And they really seemed to, there was a lot of consensus about not wanting to reduce the amount of resident-only parking spaces that are available there, or adding any additional handicap parking spaces. So they really talked about those concerns. They talked about, not necessarily understanding why the staff picked 42nd Avenue as the ideal location for a relatively flat boardwalk that would provide ADA access. And, we spent quite some time explaining that 42nd Avenue, when we assessed, the staff assessed all of the beach access paths past 21st Avenue, was one with it has a very low primary dune, which would allow the boardwalk to be relatively flat and ADA compliant. As we have said in the past, DHEC requires walkovers to be at least 24 inches above the primary dune, and ADA allows a slope of 12 to 1. So it needs to have a slow gradient path. And 42nd Avenue really becomes sort of the ideal location to do that. I don't think that the community or the neighbors are against providing added access for folks with disabilities. I think they just had concerns about the location being at 42nd Avenue.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to break this down into component pieces because I've had individual conversations with residents. And I told them, I said, number one, we have 1 handicap parking space there. It is already all resident parking, right? So the premise that we're bringing more non-residents to the area is kind of a faulty premise. If you had 2 handicap spots, you potentially have 2 people that are non-residents. There was a list of concerns. One is the plan that was sent out by Douglas Kerr was an old plan. That plan, if you look at it, is something I can tell you personally I wouldn't support. It widens pretty extensively. It appears to cut through the dunes. It has components of concrete. When you take that plan, which got circulated, and the wording of observation deck, which in and of itself looked like we're putting a bird tower in, it got a little convoluted on the front end. The other thing, 2 other component pieces that I'll mention, there were complaints of the chair companies doing drop-offs there. And I sent copies of existing code. The chair companies are not allowed to do drop-offs there. I mean, if we really want to, be compliant to code. The way that code is written is such that, the chairs are to be rented to private homes or rental homes for their property, right? And the residents are correct, and it's where I go to the beach, not this year, by the way. But oftentimes you'll see the handicap parking place blocked, you'll see the chairs there, pick up, drop off in the evening. And one other piece, Ryan, that goes back to public safety, and back when I was on public safety, the influx of golf carts there is huge. And I think at some point we need to look at those that are registered and insured versus those that are, appended to rental properties, and recognize that we've just simply got to step up enforcement of these things if we want the residents to be comfortable with changes that we make to the plans.
Yeah.
But having said that, it is resident parking. And we do need to start thinking seriously as a city about some more ADA compliance and making access available, because folks like me are getting older. That was not intended as humor, by the way.
I do want to add, Chair Buchanan, if I may, that when we left the conversation, we indicated to the group that we would go back and reassess all of the beach access paths from 21st Avenue to 57th, and we did that and have identified a potential alternative location, which could be located around 34A. That path is fairly low, not as low as 42nd, but lower than most of the other beach access paths in the area. Palm Boulevard, it would be easy to potentially modify and add a couple of ADA paved parking spaces. We also saw that there are 2 vacant lots adjacent to where the path is, so there may not be much resistance with the potential owners of that path. There are some challenges, obviously, that we would have to overcome. The walkway on 34A is around 600 feet long, so it's almost double it's double the length of 42nd Avenue, which would potentially double the cost of any work or any boardwalk the boardwalk that we were envisioning at 42nd Avenue. No existing ADA parking spaces, so that would be an added cost to do that, and permitting through SCDOT. And again, it's relatively flat, but it's still higher than 42nd, so it may be a little bit for somebody maneuvering with a wheelchair. Not only they would have to travel longer, but they would also have to potentially go through a higher slope. We don't have any survey or topographic data from 34A, so we would have to go through all that before we can even contemplate what kind of design could be accommodated there. So I think overall the design cost, the construction would be more expensive, but it's also another walkway that it's flat enough that could potentially accommodate that. We don't know until we do some surveying, but it seems like a feasible option if that's what council would like to do.
And we don't have to do it. Right.
Yep. Don't have to do what, Randy? Oh, you mean look at
the
option.
Yeah, I left it with the residents I spoke to, with working with city administration on what would be acceptable. Is there a plan that would be acceptable, instead of the city's working on a plan, the residents look at the plan, and we go back and forth on a reject. Is there anything, my ideal, and again, this is the beach I've gone to for years, would be the walkover goes where the blue mat is, right? And it's just a change of substrate, not a widening. And, having said that, everybody says, well, it's emergency access. It's been an emergency access, right? We're not running ambulances through there on a daily basis. It has been an emergency access for a very long time. And, Desiree, to the point of, finding something that's double, it's doubtful that council has the will to spend twice as much money unless the county is, opening up and sending us twice as much money, which I'm pretty sure I know the answer to that, especially now.
I would guess the answer would be no. That's just a wild guess. And I guess that's what, my question would be for the committee is, we certainly want to keep the existing beach access path for vehicular access for police and fire. Is there a design that would be acceptable? And if so, what is it? And do we then spend money to work on that design to see whether or not it would be acceptable for the owners and the neighbors and the council? We would have to go through the exercise of designing something that meets those specifications. So I guess I'm looking for some guidance, because originally the way that we had envisioned it was very similar in some way to the plan that was circulating that was old, that had the existing path like it is now, and then adjacent to it, because that right of way is wide enough to be able to support those, to include that walkway that would be very similar to what's on 21st Avenue now.
I think there's conceptual before you spend money, right? Can you get conceptual agreement if something makes sense before we spend design money? And Desiree, when you say there's room on the sides of that path, I went down there the other day. There's modest room on the sides of those paths, right? You're talking 3 feet, maybe, right? So you can't.
It runs parallel to that fence that is behind the parking spaces. So if you kind of put, imagine the line all the way down, and that would be.
I'm pretty sure you're not going to get conceptual buy-in to anything that appears to cut through vegetation. And I'll leave that to the residents that have weighed in, but I think even in front of full council, to any idea of cutting through vegetation is going to be pretty unacceptable. Ryan, I'm not trying to, take this over, but.
Oh, and I said that during our last, I think one of our last meetings, council meetings or something. It was like the idea of going through and knocking down the vegetation to put in that, that walkway was one of my concerns. But also, I brought up with Desiree at one time is trying to make make it a dual purpose, so you could drive on the handicap access type. I know the infrastructure in the design behind that would probably be a little bit more money, but I don't think it was going to be, I don't think it would cost as much as moving it to 34A would cost.
Kevin should know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Well, going down to 34A, we live on 32nd, and both paths we use get flooded tremendously. I mean, 2, 3, 4 feet deep before you get to the sand dunes. So I'm assuming that 34th is somewhat similar to that. So yeah, you're going to be spending some money on topo and other stuff. Why don't we try to get a conceptual plan done? Yeah. That can't cost that much for 42nd.
Okay, we can work on that and try to get some different alternatives. If cutting down vegetation and having both the path and the emergency access as it is right now, it's not acceptable, then what are our options, and
That's
whether
right.
there are any.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep.
Good. We already did new business. Hey, look at that. Miscellaneous. Next meeting, September 2nd.
God, September.
I know. Wednesday. We'll plan it. I may or may not be in town. If not, we can work around it.
Seems like a long ways out, but it's not.
Yes, I know.
If y'all do it the 2nd, I'll be doing it from Asheville.
Huh.
We may join you. Well,
When's the holiday?
I just got back. Yeah.
So the 7th is Labor
why
Day.
don't we just push it to the next week and not worry about it.
Push it to the 9th.
Where are we at? The 9th? I don't have my calendar in front of me. Yeah.
Ryan, we have public safety that month, that we move public safety to the 14th.
How about TBD, Desiree, and we can just determine what the date is.
Yeah, we'll figure that, because I know with the holidays coming in and then everything coming up, and I don't have my schedule, and but we'll determine. I'm supposed to be in Michigan that week. So, okay, are we going into executive session, or
Kevin?
I don't think we need to, do we?
I really don't. I mean, it's on here. I don't think we need to, because we don't have anything yet on this.
Correct.
Okay.
Motion adjourned.
Talk about ways and means.
Correct. I'll second that. All those in favor to adjourn?
All
Aye. We adjourned at 5:41.
Thanks.
You got it.
I-
Thanks, y'all.